Good morning. 3 weeks after the Easter weekend, at least 7 of the 11 are together back home in Galilee, where Jesus had told them to go and meet him. This time Thomas has joined the crew. He's learned his lesson and he's not doing his own thing anymore. Peter suggests that they go fishing and the others agree. Some of these guys had left jobs as commercial fishermen 3 years ago. When that happened, Peter had been worried about how it would work out. But he had followed Jesus and Jesus had paid his way. Now that decision was coming back to bite them. Since the night he was arrested, Jesus had talked about doing something quite different in the future that doesn't involve them. To make it worse, their savings had disappeared with Judas. And so far, Jesus hadn't turned up in Galilee. There were bills to be paid. They had to be sensible. With no money and no plan, the new normal was shaping up, and it didn't look great. Hoping to make some money the best way they knew how, they spent all night fishing and catch nothing. It must have reminded them of that last fishing trip. They'd had the same sort of night, a complete waste of time. 3 years ago, when they got to shore, tired, aching and fed up, Jesus had asked to use the boat as a stage. At the end of his talk, he had told them to throw the net out on the other side. That's how it had all started. Don't be afraid, Jesus had said to Peter. From now on you will fish for people. It will be okay. Great days. Only 3 years. It must have seemed like a lifetime ago. As they rowed back through the morning mist, there were no noisy crowds on the beach time waiting to hear Jesus. Just one solitary figure camped out beside a fire. "Hi, boys. You don't have any fish, do you?" "No such luck," they reply. "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you'll find some." Almost as though they were in a dream, repeating the events of the day that changed their lives, they'd throw the net over the side, and within seconds are grabbing for the ropes. It's full, too heavy to pull in. John is the sharpest thinker among them. "It's the Lord," he says. Slower to think but quicker to act, Peter is straight over the side, splashing his way to the shore. He gets to land. I can imagine Peter standing there with his mouth open, trying to make sense of it all. Before his head explodes, Jesus brings him back down to earth. "Why don't you bring some of the fish you've just caught?" Peter nods and realizes what's going on behind him. He goes back to help land the catch. 153 fish, large ones. Somebody did the maths and must have worked out what they would sell for. Enough to start a new business, perhaps. That breakfast was full of awkward silences. None of the disciples dared ask him if he was the Lord. Nobody had the nerve to ask where breakfast had come from. Perhaps there had been some kid going past who had 2 fish and 5 small barley loaves and had offered them to Jesus. They were also embarrassed that they remembered that last time they'd had a catch like that, they'd pulled their boats up on shore, left everything and followed the guy who was now raking the coal and handed out the bread. So, from the unprecedented experiences of Easter to our unheard of circumstances in 2020, you've probably been joining the dots for yourselves. Were the disciples getting there or not? What do you think? John says that it was the 3rd time that Jesus had appeared to them as a group, and they were still struggling to recognise him in the new environment. 3 things to take away with you. Takeaway number 1. In unprecedented circumstances, Jesus looks different even when you're out of lockdown and are beginning to get your head on again. When the new normal is anything but, it takes time and repeat experience to discern the Spirit. Takeaway number 2, and this is a Galilean bonus. When we add the last page of Matthew's record to John's, we can see that Jesus had planned 2 key appointments for his inner circle. A few days after meeting him on the beach, they see him on a Galilean hillside, like the one where Jesus had prayed, and then chosen them to be with him and to send them out to preach. This time he was sending them out on an entirely bigger kingdom of God project, with the promise that for sure he would always be with them. As you think about what's next, don't hope too much for a return to the old normality. People are recommending that you take a virtual holiday. If you think that might work for you, why don't you take yours back to the beach where Jesus first said, "Follow me." You could revisit your mountainside where he drew you in as a friend and gave you your first job. What's going to be your promotion, your great commission in our anxious world? Takeaway number 3. I'm pretty sure after doing something sensible with the miracle financial bonus that the guys took a big step up. Because a few weeks later, Peter was talking to a seriously disabled man. "I've got no money," he said, "but I've got something better. Why don't you stand up and walk?" For our unstable new normal, we need to be aware of God in new places, and we need fresh resources too. Get waiting, guys. Tell yourselves, Pentecost is just round the corner. The Spirit will fill us with the power we need when we come together and wait for him to fill us.